Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I'm so grateful that you're here. This is the Daily Medicine Transmission for September 16th, 2021. The hidden seed is revealed. So welcome to anyone who is new to this channel, regardless of what channel you find yourself on, and welcome back to all of you who are regular participants in this journey. So as always, whenever you interact with content from independent content creators like myself, it really does actually support the work when you subscribe, you like, you share, and you comment. So I will remind you again at the end of the video, just in case you forget, but I always like to get that out of the way before we get into the bulk of this transmission. So how's everyone doing today? Hope everyone is doing well. There does appear to be at least a bit of a lift, although I can't say that that lasts very long with our moon coming to meet Pluto last night. And so it does appear on some level that, are we finished yet? Have we, and not are we finished with this, but are we finished with the illusion yet? Has the delusion lost all attraction yet? Have we started to get down to reality here? And that's what we're going to find here in our intuitive portion of our transmission today. And it will, in fact, lead us into a place of I don't want to say emotional detachment, but that Aquarian moon is going to allow us to, in fact, detach from the emotional intensity of where we are at in order to fully engage in that laser point focus that Aquarius represents, looking towards the future, looking towards humanity and the humanitarian aspect of what we are doing, and not get pulled into the fray. We saw that yesterday with our reading, specifically how the moon has moved through Capricorn, and the intensity and the responsibility that Capricorn really represents for our participation in our role in what is created at a material and institutional level. And when the moon is in a beautiful trine, an earth trine with the sun in Virgo today, a sun that is going to be also in a trine with Pluto retrograde in Capricorn today. So we may find ourselves completely just drained emotionally by the responsibility and the gravity of the situation, but what that does is leave an empty vessel in which to be filled with divine intervention. And I talked about this a couple of days ago. Some people may have been pre-waving it, just feeling it as we lead up to this point, right? Somebody had shared with me that they felt like a husk of a person, and I had commented that that is exactly the moment where you surrender and allow in this divine intervention. So I think that collectively we are still struggling. It's kind of this back and forth, this volleying back and forth, which is very intentional, right? What a way to distract and drain people's energy than to get them emotionally caught up in the fear of back and forth. And, there's nothing we can do about other people that are engaging in this. And it's getting gnarly, right? You're seeing people for who they really are now, and it's coming out pretty strongly and has been, sanctioned essentially by our quote unquote leadership, right? The people who are responsible for maintaining and, being responsible for maintaining the current institutional matrix that we're still under, which is falling away, and desperate to hold on to control of it, of course, but they've definitely sanctioned in some ways this divisiveness, and to not get caught in it is the best thing we can do. And I do feel like when the moon moves into Aquarius, this is our opportunity to harness that today and to get a very balanced mental perspective, and to have our emotions also be balanced in where we're focusing, right? Where do we want our energy to be focused? Do we want that laser focus? Do we want to harness the full potential of the human collective here? Or are we going to allow ourselves to get either pulled into the hive mind and let go of all individuality and sovereignty? Or are we going to be pulled into the chess game again? So it's really up to us at every single moment. And of course, We've talked about this endlessly. You can find this on many different, in many different directions about how important the choice is, right? It's our choice of how we're going to experience this ride. It certainly is important that we deal with reality. And I think that the moon moving through Capricorn, even in that trine to the sun, it's a beautiful earth trine. We'll talk about all the astrology after we get past the intuitive portion of this transmission. But the thing about the moon meeting Pluto is that things that often are deeply repressed, hidden way down into the subconscious, the unconscious, make themselves known very easily through the emotional landscape. So dream state is really important to pay attention to, and to be easy on yourself, to allow yourself the human experience of feeling things, because this is our barometer, right? And as things come up and we feel them, and we feel fear, and we feel confusion, and even inertia, like analysis paralysis, right? Or just paralysis in terms of our survival mechanisms, it's important to just acknowledge them. And if we can take a step back and be that Aquarian, really embody that Aquarian nature in this emotional landscape, it allows us to be the observer while simultaneously engaging in our human experience of feelings, because we get so much information. So one of the things that is coming through very strongly, at least for me, and I want to share it with you because I had a direct experience of it, is that the animals are such potent messengers, right? And this is why I use them in my own practice and in these intuitive messages and these readings, because they are some of the most accessible messages and messengers, right? Many people are waiting for some sort of like voice in their head, or to have contact, or how do I connect with my higher self or my galactic family or my guides? And it's like it's right in front of us all the time with the animals. They are potent messengers that are very accessible to us. They are our siblings in this whole planetary process. So one thing I want to share that was a very obvious message yesterday is that I found a snake in my bathroom. And it was a tiny snake. And it was a ring snake. They're absolutely harmless, right? And it was no bigger than a worm, really, but it was in my bathroom. And it kind of startled me, because you don't expect to see a snake in your bathroom, right? And what is your bathroom? It's a place where you bathe. It's a place where you clean yourself. It's a place where you expel the waste in your body, right? All of those types of activities are happening in the Western bathroom, right? And so to have this experience, like I said, was a little startling. I didn't expect it, to have this little snake wriggling, trying to get out of my bathroom, right? How did it get there? I live in a rural environment. There's still a lot of work that needs to be done on this house. There are probably little holes and cracks in the structural integrity, right, where something like this may have happened. I don't want to think too much about how it happened, although my sister was like, well, there's one, there's probably going to be more. And I was like, no, please don't tell me there's a nest. But like I said, they are harmless. Ring snakes are harmless. They are not venomous. They're not going to hurt you. And so it's not something that I was really like freaked out about. I was just really startled. But there's that serpent medicine, right? And that snake coming right into my awareness, like in that area. And, many people have been feeling very physically ill. They're having a lot of inflammation in their body. I certainly am having my own issues right now. In terms of lots of different things. My own cycle right now, of course, is leading me to having some discomfort at the moment, but also too, many people are getting ill, right? And they're having considerable challenges. People are having accidents. They're having accidents, right? They're having issues in their body. They're having illnesses that are coming. And there are lots of different reasons this could be happening, right? We've talked about solar weather, and one thing I will say is that it is actually a very high likelihood that the recent there was a filament that erupted on the sun a couple of days ago that is going to reach, the CME is going to reach us over the weekend. And merging with a coronal hole stream. And what is that? That's basically when the magnetics that are branching off from the sun manage to connect to the magnetics of the planet, the interplanetary magnetic field, and they link, right? And they create a tunnel. And so and then radiation and solar weather is able to like really flow very easily in this way. And so it's very possible that the CME and the coronal hole stream are going to merge together, which could be a very, very powerful experience over the weekend in terms of plasma, reaching us and really impacting us. So we have to pay attention to what's happening on that level, because any kind of solar weather seems to really, increase inflammation, right? Bringing more energy to the body, bringing more heat, bringing more light, bringing more information as well. And so if you're already struggling in that area, it's important to be aware of these things so you can do what you need to do to mitigate it as much as you can, right? You don't want to be completely taken out. Although one thing I did mention the other day, and I think it was just yesterday actually, is that, pain in the body, for instance, or emotional pain, for as much as we don't want to feel it, sometimes we can see it as a blessing because it stops us in our tracks. It forces us to get into our body. It's a very sixth house and Virgo type of thing, right? It is in that sixth house, which is the Virgo house, that when we have some sort of healing crisis that comes up, it kind of forces us to get into the deeper structures of ourselves and our subconscious and in our body and do that work of self-care and, routines and habits that need to be initiated. They need to be tweaked maybe. And the sixth house is really where we end up getting our shit together, like in a very unglamorous, not sexy way at all, right? It is like the work on a daily basis that is, often we're not ever going to be recognized for in the moment. And that's a very important thing to put a pin in right now, because that is very much the energy of the sun in its trine to Pluto, is that these aspects that we are working on and doing this work, it's not really just for us. It's for generations to come. And Mars in Libra right now, especially in that second degree of Libra, is going to trine the Aquarius moon today. We'll go into all of this in detail, but there is that hidden seed revealed to show us that there's actually something more to this perfect form of relationship than just the perfect form, right? You have the perfect form that is symbolized by a balanced archetypal reference to the perfect person, right? Whatever that is, right? And then immediately the next degree of Libra, just like in every single sign, is its contrast. And for all of the perfection of form, there is a centralization that comes back, and that's the seed, right? For a brief moment, the seed is revealed in the process, and then over the course of Libra, it is about the transfiguration in order to find balance. And the seed is planted for the next cycle by the end, right? But for this brief moment, we see it. We see the seed revealed, and it's not till we come back around until the beginning, right? The spring equinox, or the coming back around to the beginning of the zodiac, which is Aries, right? That the seed is brought back into focus, which is its opposite. Aries and Libra are opposite of each other. But in this degree where Mars is, it's this moment where that seed point is revealed. And so we get some measure of being able to act on that with Mars. And in that trine to an Aquarius moon, it's going to be something very unexpected, I think, within us that's going to allow for the surfacing of this. So one thing, pay attention to the animals that come through, the synchronicities, of course. And, there's lots of ways that can happen, right? We talked about this before, the random songs that come into your awareness, right? A conversation, somebody's got a t-shirt on, somebody's got a bumper sticker on their car, and it's just like, whoa, that is like so relevant. There are deeper synchronicities, people that actually are clairaudient, and that's coming online quite a bit, isn't it? That you start hearing things, and not in a way that is disruptive, but just that the veil thinning and having more access to information and experiences that you normally wouldn't have. This happens to me quite a bit in that weird space between being awake and being asleep, right? Especially as I'm about to wake up, as you're coming out of your REM sleep and you're coming out of your stages of sleep and you're coming towards awakening. That tends to be where I have like an overlay of a word or a symbol or something being spoken to me that's not part of the dream sequence. It's just this information. And so that kind of stuff too. But the animals will make themselves very known at exactly the right time. And they are divine messengers. So it's important to pay attention to those things. So the serpent medicine making itself very known, that healing element, the power that is at the root of us, right? Remember, the seat of our immunity is in our gut, right? In our gut, the bottom of our gut. So that's very sacral chakra as well. And in the kidneys and in the water of our body is all that immunity. And so the snake and the kundalini is this potential that we have within us in order to heal and to direct that energy to a healing process. And so it's something is going on many levels that is really directing people to address their healing process again. And I'm certainly not immune from this, no pun intended. Having that snake show up in my reality was a pretty big indication that I need to be paying attention to these things right now, and also to be able to communicate that to you as well. So let's get into the reading, because I want to show you here how we are in fact vacillating in terms of our commitment to our higher purpose, to renewing our commitment to why we're here, and the fact that we are in fact supported in so many ways. We are really, it's like being on a ping pong table, it feels like, collectively. Now, let's just look at it, okay? And we have this opportunity here today with the moon moving into Aquarius to really kind of just like harness that emotional power rather than being controlled by it, which is very difficult to do with Pluto involved and the moon meeting Pluto, right? This is raw energy, and you can see right away, here's our devil card reversed, okay? So it's the Capricorn card. And one of the things that came up the other day that I want to draw attention to, because I wanted to talk about it again, is that when you look at this is the sacred imperative of life, right? It is the engine of nature. We talked about that yesterday too. That Capricorn is the engine of nature. It's the sacred fractal unfolding. It is the sacred imperative of life, which is through procreation and reproduction, right? But the trap of Capricorn and why it's considered the devil, in my opinion, is more that it's not the end all be all. And when you get caught up in the materialism of what this represents, then you are in fact trapped, and you're trapped in a karmic cycle. You're trapped in the wheel of the wheel of reincarnation in terms of more Eastern religion and philosophy. And you see here that these two balls are, I mean, look at this. But look as well too, you have the space in which this is penetrating, right? Very much at the top, right? Very much at the top of this card. That is the sacred feminine. We cannot lose sight of this right now, how important this is. And in many different traditions, when it comes to the pomegranate, if you notice that is a pomegranate that is being shown to you in the imagery for this transmission in that thumbnail, the pomegranate is like a sacred fruit across the board. And one of the things that I think is really interesting about the pomegranate is from so many different spiritual perspectives, Christianity, Judaism, even in the more Gnostic and secret societies, ancient Egypt, Greek, all of it is the pomegranates very special. Even in like Greek mythology, it was Persephone that ate the seeds of the pomegranate fruit that bonded her to Hades or Pluto. So there is the idea that in Virgo, you have eventually the fruit will decay and open and give itself away in order to release the seed of the new cycle, right? But in it's the seed of the holy bloodline for the Jews, and Greek Orthodox and Catholic Christianity. And so, according to Christian tradition, the pomegranate is the symbol of Mary as the mother of the church, both the Mary as the Virgin and Mary Magdalene. This is really important, especially in Gnosticism. Now, I do understand that a lot of these more esoteric traditions have certainly left a bad taste in the mouth of many people who are devout Christians, and there's so much to be unpacked here when it comes to these things, because there's been a lot of hijacking, there has been a lot of misrepresentation and misunderstanding of these practices and what this really means, not by anybody, I would say misunderstanding by the very people who are involved in it, right? And so that's a conversation that we can have at another time. What I want to just share with you is how much the pomegranate is across the board part of the esoteric traditions and is very related to the sacred feminine, okay? And it is the hidden seed, right? This is the sacred imperative of life, that there is the merging of the polarities here, which is represented here by this card. But when you are trapped by the material aspect of it, if you don't realize that the sacred imperative of life, the bringing together of the masculine and feminine, the sexual alchemy that produces actual life, if you can't get past the desire for that, then you end up in the same karmic wheel, right? And this is what you see. These two are they're sex cells that are separating in meiosis. I mean, this is exactly what it looks like under a microscope. You see the spindle that's pulling apart. You see the two chromosomes that are pulling apart that then will come back together to form a new person. And you see all these people trapped in here. That is what happens when you can't make it past the materialism. And this is what the devil represents. It's that point of like, are you going to transcend the material, or are you going to stay stuck here? And when you get stuck there, this is where Satanism comes in, because you get stuck here. This is where it's all about materialism at that point. So, and you can see that the goat has a smile on its face. There's a third eye here. Remember that staff with the strife, the 5 of Wands? It's the same exact staff that we had. So again, it's that brick wall of reality and gravity and materialism that that holds us back in some ways if we can't see the bigger picture here. So the devil card is reversed. And this is really speaking to me, at least, about, there's a real resistance to what this represents. And with the moon meeting Pluto retrograde in Capricorn right now, I think that we're really, for the most part, collectively, we're still really struggling. And I think whatever has come up as a result of the moon meeting Pluto last night and into this morning, I think has really brought some things up from the surface that are very uncomfortable, right? But remember that Pluto represents the power of our transformation, especially in evolutionary astrology and the natal chart. Where you find Pluto is your soul's default setting of how it transforms, what elements and what type of experiences lend itself to transformation at a soul level, what you're familiar with and what you've already done. And so there's a lot of focus on Pluto in that aspect. So, but I do feel like this causal factor here is the difficulty on a collective level with that connection with the moon in Capricorn to Pluto retrograde. And with the sun that's going to be in a trine to Pluto by the end of today, we're going to talk about that and how we can make the best use of that energy, because it's not about us as individuals. And I think that's really where people get stuck, because we're not doing things for us necessarily at an ego level. We want to be doing, and this is a very Virgo thing, which is where the sun is. It's to be of service. It's to release the seed of the next generation. Virgo is about growing the fruit that holds the seed, right? And so everything that we're doing is not meant to satisfy our own material desires. It ultimately, at its highest here, and when you move past the devil, is when you realize that it's for a much more sacred imperative, which is life itself, and not just satisfying ourselves. But I think that when the difficulty here with the moon meeting Pluto is just how much that's been repressed, how much we've been holding it down and not acknowledging it. And certainly because Pluto is in the sign of Capricorn, which represents the institutions, that represents the very material reality. And as that is unraveling, within us, and soon to be unraveling outside of us when Pluto stations direct, it's a very difficult position to be in. And again, people are having accidents. People are having serious health issues. People are having, really strong issues in their body. Maybe people are having a hard time in their emotional life and feeling just like spiritually empty. There's a lot of things here, and we can get trapped here. And the moon and Pluto, like I said, bringing all this stuff up to the surface emotionally can be a point of just giving up or giving in, right? And so there's something here that is bringing us to this moment of just being totally drained. Here's Saturn in Pisces. Speaking of Capricorn, Saturn in Pisces, the Eight of Cups. This is being like an empty husk, right? An empty, just completely drained cup. I mean, this imagery here is pretty striking, right? It's dark. It's dark and it's gray. The cups are mostly empty. These flowers are it's like squeezing the last bit out, and it's just like drying up. So indolence means essentially laziness, but depression and suicidal ideation can be part of this too, especially when it's reversed. Thankfully, it's not, right? So at the heart of the matter here, we've reached a place where the delusions have lost all their attraction, right? And we're left with a lot of frustration. And the reverse devil and that Capricornian energy that's come through with the moon and meeting Pluto like that, I think it is leading here, and we're in this place of frustration and just being drained emotionally and we're meeting a brick wall when it comes to our emotions, when it comes to our feelings, when it comes to our connection to source, right? Because that is what Pisces represents. It's the ocean of potential here. We have to hear the call, right? To leave the bog of the numbness, right? We can't just keep, avoiding it or willfully ignoring it. We can, but many of us are getting to the point now where we're just totally drained, and this can lead to depression, and it can lead to suicidal ideation, and on a much, more subconscious level, we find ourselves being faced with certain kinds of crises or tragedies or whatever that are bringing us to a place in that Virgo sixth house type of way where we have to face ourselves and face what's going on. We can't stay numb necessarily, and if we do, then we really are giving up and letting ourselves go. And so we have to open our eyes to the upcoming change. We can't stay numb to what is happening because it's just draining the life out of us in order to do so. And you can see that happening, right? Many people want to keep being spectators. Many people want to stay on the sidelines. Many people are living in a fantasy or a delusion that they're not going to be impacted by what is unfolding right now, which is very much this, right? Imagine if you are completely connected to materialism as your form of power and desire, and it's being unraveled at every turn. Those who are not able to get past this point and worship the materialism will in fact find ways to siphon that power from other people, and we are being siphoned in some way. And if we continue to not acknowledge what is happening and open our eyes to what is unfolding so that we can make conscious choices about ourselves in this moment, then we will find ourselves completely tapped, right? And Saturn will just drain us dry because we have not allowed ourselves to tap into an infinite source of love and an infinite source of compassion and forgiveness for ourselves, forgiveness for other people, and realizing that, again, if we get pulled into the emotional fray, they're useful idiots. Not to say that we shouldn't be guided by our feelings about a situation, but we're losing them, right? We are giving them away to the delusion. But this is hopeful. As dark and hopeless as it looks, it's upright, which means there's hope here. It allows our cup to be filled because we are just getting to a point where we're willfully emptying it because we are connected to the delusion, right? The delusion that materialism is all there is, or, our desire for material satisfaction is all there is. And there's a responsibility that we have. And we talked about that yesterday. So now here is our volleying back and forth, back and forth. We can't really get ourselves together here. Add some, again, reversed in our subconscious. So yesterday it was at the top of our awareness. We were like, yes, we're being supported. Now it's back down here and it's reversed again. So we're questioning it again. Mostly because I think people are being pushed up against their boundaries right now and really getting squeezed. And so now it's just like, oh, wait, are we doomed? Are we actually being supported? Is that all total bullshit? Like, where is it? Where is the support? Well, it's surrounding us constantly. But free will is the law of this universe. So we have to make conscious choices about ourselves and our sovereign nature and what we're going to do. But right now, it does feel like that we are still struggling here on a subconscious level where we're drawing our power or lack of power from the fact that, there's nobody here that's going to help us, right? We are doomed. There's no higher picture to any of this. There's no surrounding support, which is, Vesta, remember asteroid Vesta, we talked about this yesterday, still in conjunction with Arcturus right now. She's soon going to leave that space. But she's still in a conjunction within 3 degrees of Arcturus. And remember that we become aware of being surrounded, right? And that is what is the spark of our spiritual transformation, our spiritual creativity at the center of us. And she is the patron goddess of that. So, but it does, whenever we take a big step forward, we're getting pushed back. And this pushback is really dragging us in this place here. This is collective. Not everybody's feeling like this, but it's pretty clear to me what is going on, that we keep getting pushed back as a result of being engaged emotionally in the chess game. And so again, questioning, are we really being attended to? Can I actually operate from my higher self perspective? Can I be the observer while still being on this planet? And there's so many things in the astrology today that are really pointing this out as well. Now, and to add to this, right, the King of Roses also reversed. So there's the King of Keys also reversed. So we have this masculine quality here with, Mars in Libra, is pretty strong and actually is at its detriment, but it becomes really obvious that we are feeling disempowered in our own masculine at this moment. And the thing is that the divine feminine coming in and being present right now is, you can't separate a healthy masculine from that. It's impossible, right? Because then that's toxic femininity, right? When it's just control, then it's not sacred, right? It's not sacred. It's control. And so there has to be the balance point. And it seems like that right now, the attention is being put on the fact that we're all kind of feeling like disempowered in some way, right? The King of Roses is a balance point of passion and masculine fire, and the roses, which is the water, the receptive, passive nature. And so it's very balanced. And you can see even in this card that he, his throne is very basic, right? It's a very basic wooden throne. It's within this garden. It's a little, and it's got this, it looks like like an old aqueduct, right? And it's kind of grown over, and he's left his throne. He's over here standing in the rose garden, and he's holding a number of roses in his hand, and he's giving them his attention. And so a lot of times this card will represent a person who's like a father or a husband, right? The nurturing aspect of the male character. But in this reversal, right, it does feel like that we are there's something being ended, right? That we're still attached to something that we need to let go of, and that seems pretty clear. An old love that hasn't been released. Again, the delusions have lost all attraction. And so I think we're still holding on to that old delusion, whatever that delusion was for us, holding on to it and not letting it go. And it's time to let go of the attachment. And so there's a pattern of self-negation here that is referenced by this card being reversed within us as individuals, that it's important now that we take a look at things clearly and take control of our perception, because otherwise we will feel disempowered and we won't release the attachment to what was, and we won't really feel balanced. And remember, that was yesterday too, the Queen of Wands, the King of Roses. They have this similar quality of balancing contrasts, and we are very much feeling disempowered right now in terms of our action. And like I said, Mars is at its detriment in Libra. It is at its least powerful in what it represents, which is the warrior energy. And there's nothing necessarily wrong in and of itself with that. You have to learn how to work with that energy. So this also could suggest that there is much more of a focus here on that warrior nature into the receptive and the passive and the healing aspect. But I would say that also, based on everything else we're looking at here, it is showing that our conscious attention and awareness is that we're kind of folding in, right? We're kind of afraid. We're having a hard time letting go of what was and taking a step bravely into a new direction that has much more to do with what are we doing that's going to last for generations? Like, what is it that we're doing? Are we just going to focus on what is going to satisfy our material safety and desire in this moment? Or are we going to work towards actually bringing new earth here that is going to be for the generations to come? Because it's real easy to be like, I need to satisfy my own material security right in this moment. So I'm going to do things or not do things that I'll have blinders on, so that's all I can see, as opposed to how are my actions going to impact down the line. We need to think much bigger. And this attention with this King of Roses right now is really speaking to the fact that we're feeling disempowered, that we don't have the bravery and courage to see the hidden seed revealed, and to see it for what it is and act on that instead of just getting really hyper fixated on what is what we want in this moment, right? This is not a King of Roses. This is something very different, and so that reversal really speaks to this in terms of our conscious attention. Here's our Six of Swords and Mercury in Aquarius. So we are, regardless, heading to in a situation, an expectation, I guess you could say, or an effect, right? This is what to expect as an outcome here, is a very balanced mental perspective, right? Science is just a methodology for observing the world around us and coming to some sort of conclusion. Mercury in Aquarius. Now look at this card. It's chaotic all around it, except for this circle. It has all the swords meeting in the middle in a very balanced fashion. You have a cross in the middle, which is also suggesting, right, that axis of our horizontal consciousness and our vertical power, right? The midpoint that represents us at our completely at our transmuted self, right? And the circle within the square, right? That infinite part of ourself. And this is suggesting here that the mind can really unfold all of its potentials and be put towards the search for truth, right? The good thing about all of this is that when we, again, find ourselves empty, like with the Eight of Cups, we are allowing divine intervention to come in. And so we find ourselves using our mind for what it's best intended for, which is to find solutions, search for the truth, and find some success after a lot of anxiety, right? And that's been the case for quite a while. And so we have something to actually look forward to, and using our mind for its intended purpose, right, is to, like I said, search for the truth, to engage in empirical reason and logic, and not necessarily saying that's the only thing, but it is, with the moon coming into Aquarius as well, and for Mercury to be in an air sign of Libra right now, this is very, this gives us something to look forward to, that we were going, all of these problems, all of this really uncomfortable energy that was repressed, that's coming up to the surface, all of the feelings of just being drained and feeling disempowered, not realizing it, does lead us to an opportunity to harness our mind for what it's intended for, which is to really just get to the center of the matter, right? Whatever it is, science. Now, in the Rider-Waite deck, I mean, the Six of Swords, if you're familiar, is a lot less, it's not as like, hey, science, let's put our minds towards what it's supposed to be for. It's definitely a lot more like okay, I'm going to retreat away. And in some ways you can look at it that way. But in this case, I like the imagery because it suggests that the retreat is not in defeat, although the card before that is absolutely defeat. It's the defeat that leads us to taking responsibility for ourselves and really doing the work to use our mind for what its purpose is meant to be, which is to allow its full potentials to unfold and search for the actual truth, rather than getting just fucking crushed, just crushed by the weight of and gravity of the reality of the situation, because that's certainly an intended purpose as well, right? Is to crush you and your will so that you don't actually fight back, or you don't actually stand up for yourself. And as we see, we have the elk right here. So let's look at our guidance to help with this process, because this does seem like, how the hell are we going to get there? The King of Keys reversed right now. Again, it's like I feel like that, this is a showing us that our success may be elusive, right? We're making a lot of effort without a lot of payoff. Have you followed the advice from yesterday? Because it's back. Are you taking time to recuperate, to rest, to gather and mobilize your internal resources? Respite, right? Instead of striving and striving. See, that's the thing. There is, we're striving and striving, but we're not getting the effort that we need. That means we have to change our strategy here, right? We have to change our strategy. And Pallas Athena is, in fact, retrograde. Athena, right? The goddess of strategy. She's retrograde in Pisces. So we are being directed in some ways to go over and maybe reconfigure our strategy. And it's not working collectively, right? We keep pushing and pushing and pushing in a certain way, whatever the way is, and we are feeling like we're not getting anything out of it. Did you take the advice from yesterday? There's those animal guides, right? Take the time to rest and recuperate. Get into your space. Get into that stillness within you. If you want to get the guidance that you're asking for, you have to create a space for it. And sometimes life comes in and forces that space to be created by giving you a crisis or a challenge or whatever, right? And it forces you, just like pain in your body, you have to then be present with your body, and there's nothing else you can do, and you just have to sit with it and it creates a space within you in order to, come to a realization, be inspired divinely, right? To have a miracle come in. But what this is saying is that I know that we are pushing and pushing and pushing. And if we keep pushing and pushing and pushing, even if it's a goal-oriented thing, right? We can't reestablish the commitment to our higher self and to know that we are surrounded by so much energy that's supporting us on this journey to New Earth right, into this process. But we have to rest. We can't just keep pushing. And I'm not suggesting that we shouldn't take action. That was yesterday, right? If you're going to take external action, do it from a place of internal peace. That way that you can connect to this, add some, right? And we had a good day yesterday where that was the case. And now we've kind of fallen back off the wagon again collectively. And it's just like, as soon as we get involved in one victory, the other side mounts their attack. And that's just how it goes on the chessboard. We have to make sure that we are aware of that and not emotionally attaching ourselves to it. And part of that is taking the time to mobilize our internal resources and take a break and rest. Like actually rest, because we're just draining ourselves right now. And being drained, that is a very intentional thing right now, is to drain us and to distract us. So the elk, right? Stand tall and maintain your dignity, my friends, no matter what. Literally stand tall, right? Open your heart chakra. Stand tall. Have you ever seen an elk in person? They are huge. They're massive. So you can embody this, right? And this message is coming through loud and clear. Stand tall, maintain your dignity. Don't fold over just because other people are saying you should, or they are mounting their attack. And it's scary, right? It's scary to see people that will have no problem showing you their true colors now and saying things like, all kinds of things. I'm not going to repeat them there, but you've seen them on social media. And it's intentional. It's, again, meant to divide us. And you can't do anything about the people necessarily who are allowing themselves to get pulled into that. That's their karma. That's for them to deal with. And if anything, somebody's got to play the bad guy in the story so that you can realize where your line is. So it's important that the focus is on your dignity, your integrity, you standing tall, rather than getting sucked into the fact that somebody is doing whatever they can to try to minimize you. And it's difficult. We're really feeling it right now. We really are feeling like folding in, and we really are feeling like something is being diminished, and that we're we're self-negating just because we're getting messages through various means that are supporting that self-negation, right? That's what they want. It's way more powerful when you're doing it to yourself. And the research that I did in my psychology degree, man, I should have published it. I had no idea at the time how incredibly pertinent it was going to be to now. That was 15 years ago, which is that people will engage in their own objectification when they think it's their idea to do it, right? When you're being forced to do it, it won't be as often. And when there's no environmental, ecological, temporal, whatever, if there's nothing in the environment that supports it, certainly you're not going to find yourself engaging in behavior like that either. But it's that subtle thing, right, that's introduced into your environment that's not overt, but it gives you the impression that you've made the decision to participate in this behavior. And people will objectify themselves and participate in behaviors that are actually detrimental to them in the long run if they think they're doing it, making the choice, okay? So think about how we are manipulated psychologically in every angle in order to do this, because it's way more powerful in that way rather than being forced, okay? Now, the force is coming, and they're trying to right now because they're losing, there's a loss of the control mechanism. And so then desperation comes in, and you just, make really bold moves because you don't have any other option. So that's something to consider too. And then the paths unknown, right? The 8 of Scrolls, when the paths unknown is reversed, again, undecided, hesitant, afraid to take the unknown path, right? It's a lot easier to take the comfortable path that we already know that is clearly falling away from us at every given moment. And it's not working anymore. And it's important that we challenge ourselves to break free of our fear and our inertia. And again, the elk can really help with this when we embody this and take this message for what it is. It's easier to go down the path that we're already familiar with. But what happens when that path is swept away, which is what's happening with Pluto right now? And I think this is where people are really struggling, is that the moon meeting Pluto is showing us that in each of us emotionally, that path is being swept away. And then we're like, uh-oh, well, now I got to go down a path that I don't even know. And so maybe I'll just stand here and like this person endlessly. And that's not going to help you either, right? You want to get to a point where your mind, the scrolls, right? Your mind is unfolding its full potential and really using it to make decisions, to come to solutions, right? To search for truth. And sometimes you have to take the path that is dark and unknown in order to get to that truth. And we need some integrity and some dignity, and we need to stand tall and be a king in our own way. Because like I said, there's no separating these polarities with the sacred feminine coming back. It is not possible. It is not possible. I do not buy into the narrative whatsoever that the world would be better if we just get rid of men. That is ridiculous. And if you are still in this mindset that getting rid of men is the same as dismantling the patriarchy, then you are, in my opinion, you're lost. And that's a psyop too, right? That's a psyop. So just consider that as well, is that there's no getting rid of the men when the sacred imperative of life is what we're here to do. So let's look at the astrology, because, it's astrology and it pretty much is a time traveling tool, number one. Number two, and a time traveling tool in the future, right? We get to anticipate what's coming and to understand how we are inseparable from the cycles of the cosmos, right? And that they're actually here to support us. So here is the 16th of September, which is today. Let's see, guys. And our moon right now, well, not right now. Let's see where our moon is right now, and then we'll go back a little bit. Our moon right now is at the very last degree of Capricorn, so it's just about to move into Aquarius. So let's use our time traveling mechanism and go back in time and see what has been transpiring over the course of the last 24 hours. Well, maybe more like the last 11 hours, really, because we're looking at the changeover at midnight Eastern Standard Time. So number one, the moon is in this beautiful Earth trine. Remember, Earth is a feminine signature, has a feminine signature, okay? So we have Capricorn and we have Virgo. This beautiful Earth trine before they meet Pluto. Now, and there's some other things I want to talk about that are not necessarily being aspected. Actually, they are. Black Moon Lilith is very much in the mix right now. And so I'll bring that into the conversation here in just a moment when it's time. So this trine here, this Earth trine, this is about us making a total commitment to this goal, this transcendent goal, right? We take responsibility. We realize that we all have something to add and contribute to this beautiful fractal of reality that is unfolding, the sacred imperative of life, the engine of nature that is controlled by natural law, right? The law of nature, not the laws of humans, the law of nature. And this is us in this moon position is the commitment to this process, knowing that there is some measure of institutional framework that'll support us being able to commit to this process. It's a woman entering a convent, right? Use it loosely, right? I'm not suggesting that we become nuns, right? Or monks or whatever, but kind of, right? Because you're making a commitment to this process. And the trine to the sun at this degree of Virgo is, oh my God, the Mary and her little lamb. Geez. I've been talking to somebody about nursery rhymes lately, and we've been like deconstructing them. And this morning, as I was doing the prep for this reading, the Sabian symbol for 24 degrees Virgo is Mary and her little lamb. And it was just like one of those dope moments, Jesus and Mary and the lamb, right? Mary and her little lamb. It's really, the Mary Magdalene story needs to be brought to the awareness so much more than it is. But there's a sense of innocence and spontaneity and a genuine purity that comes along with this symbol that is in a direct trine here with the moon. And so these two aspects in this trine, the feminine, the masculine, the sun, the solar energy and the lunar energy, and what they represent within each of us, right? The polarity within each of us supporting each other in this moment of stepping into a sense of purity and innocence and spontaneity on your spiritual journey, and the support that it is allowing as we feel into our desire to completely commit to this, right? To our spiritual path, whatever it is. And the sun representing our expression of that through this sacred feminine, through the spontaneity and the innocence, right? To be like little children in some ways, to have that beginner's mind, to have that purity, to not get caught up in the successes of the ego, which is going to be brought right to the surface the moment the moon comes and meets Capricorn, Pluto and Capricorn, okay? First of all. And so I talked about that already, right? This is where a lot of repressed, very deep, dark, authentic, but raw types of experiences are able to make their way up to the surface of our own emotions and our subconscious. So how were your dreams? I mean, look at this. This is light last night into this morning. So this became very, very clear. Now, I'm going to share something with you. In my dream last night, I had a cat found a lizard and ate it. Okay, and so we talked about the Lyran aspect. The Lyrans are very commonly characterized in the feline archetype. There's so much variety with the Lyrans because there's many stars. So there are many star systems, meaning there are planets with variety, of course, and they're billions of years old, so evolution, of course, but they seem to come to us in this feline type of energy most often right now. And so in that dream, the cat came and ate the lizard, the reptilian aspect. And I will share with you as well that Venus is coming into a Draco connection here, and actually will be squaring Saturn tomorrow in a sextile to Draco. Okay, so keep that in mind too, that when that self-preservation, that desire for security is initiated, our reptilian brain takes over, and we have to be mindful of that. And so as it comes up from the deep unconscious and becomes made aware, we become aware of it, at least in our feelings and maybe our intuition. This is, highlighted here by this Pluto and moon conjunction that happened overnight. And then the moon actually comes into a square with asteroid Vesta, as I talked about earlier, is still in that same kind of degree there, at the end of Libra, where it's actually in an opposition to the Andromeda Galaxy. That's something else we can talk about tomorrow, because now it's coming into a direct opposition with the Andromeda Galaxy. But this square here, this is the Pluto, natal Pluto, 27 to 28 degrees is the natal Pluto of the United States. Pluto is the United States is gonna have a Pluto return this year, and it's gonna go back and forth over that point throughout the year into 2022, because it's gonna, of course, Pluto will station retrograde again later, and so it's gonna keep hovering back over this point, and there's going to be plenty of destructive elements when it comes to the United States chart. Now, this is where the moon is in this square to Vesta right now. And what is this? Well, the idea is that the imagery is this large aviary, right? And so if you've ever been in an aviary, you know what it is. It's full of birds, right? And birds clearly carry that symbol and that signature of spiritual forces and spiritual transcendence. But what is an aviary? Well, it's kind of a prison. It's contained, right? It's contained, institutionally, materially. So the aviary is somewhere that these birds are able to move freely. They have access to the entire space that they're within, but there is, in fact, some sort of material reality that contains them. And so you have full access to all of the spiritual forces that are in this space of the, the United States institutions, for instance, but you only have access to them as far as the material matrix of reality allows you to. So we come to realize, this, we come to feel it, right? That we have access to all of these spiritual forces, but there is that matrix of physical material reality that still holds all of that. The square with Vesta is really, that tension there is really forcing us to lean into the fact that there is so much more beyond that veil that are supporting us, and it's really it's imperative that we connect to that. There's Adsum being retrograde or reversed in our reading, right? That there is a limit to what we think we have access to in terms of our spiritual connection, and that square is really going to highlight that really strongly, and I'm sure it already has, because that was this morning, right? So from there we find the other thing that's very interesting is the sun is going to be in a direct quincunx with Jupiter retrograde, now at 23 to 24 degrees Aquarius. This is, on the one hand, we are bringing in that spontaneity, like I said, that innocence, Mary and her little lamb, right? Like the real avatars of Jesus and Mary, like brought together in like this very beautiful, innocent, journey on the spiritual path, where your ego is not getting involved and you're not trying to get pulled into the drama and the successes. It really is about the purity of the path, and ultimately being of service and giving of ourselves in a very innocent type of way. Now the quincunx here with Jupiter, expanding the space within us in order to teach from a place of very deep wisdom. And the way that we do that is that we have access to experiences that have inflamed our passions in the past, right? So in some ways, you can see how these things don't really fit together, because on the one hand, we're expressing ourselves through this innocence and this purity on our path, but where Jupiter is, it's really expanding within us the potential for we need to have these experiences in order to teach from a place of teach this wisdom from a place of where we've already experienced these types of events that have been really destructive and challenging and inflamed us. And so how do we find the alchemical point here in this quincunx? How do we adjust ourselves? Where's the opportunity here? Well, that's a really good question. That's a really good question. And it's directly related here to this trine that's going to come along with Pluto, of course, retrograde as the moon moves into Aquarius. So one thing I want to point out is that before that happens exactly, we're going to see that the moon comes into that trine with Mars, right? The hidden seed is revealed for this one moment, right? The divine feminine is brought into the picture, the creative centralization that is inseparable from the perfect form of relational balance. And Mars is the warrior, right? The warrior that is going to be in some ways courageous enough to release all of the pretenses and show the hidden seed, what it's all for, right? And it's going to come from something unexpected, right? Because the moon in 2 degrees Aquarius is something unexpected, something that we have no control over. And it really does show us how we can use our mental acuity and our efficiency and our intelligence, right? That's science, Mercury in Aquarius, using our minds in order to address a situation that we have absolutely no control over, an unexpected storm, right? For everything that humanity builds, nature can take away in a hot second. And that second degree of Aquarius is what that represents. And so within us, right, again, in our feelings, our subconscious realm, our intuition, this trine to Mars, it's like, it's only through these unexpected experiences that take away everything that we've built that we're going to be able to see the hidden seed. So this trine is really important. Again, it's, whatever this quincunx represents for us and the way we adjust ourselves in this moment is going to come through a very challenging situation in some ways. And then we find ourselves next, the moon in Aquarius is going to trine Rahu, or the North Node. And this is really important because it's setting the stage here for the fact that we are inseparable from where we came from. Again, right? that the root foundation of the past is going to sustain whatever decision we make in a crisis, right? So the Sabian symbol is a council of ancestors, is seen implementing the efforts of a young leader. So whatever's come before, whatever foundation has already happened in the past, right? Again, go back to that Jupiter in Aquarius, the past experiences that we utilize now to teach from wisdom. It's this, the moon in this moment here in a trine to the North Node, right? Our soul's karmic trajectory. This is allowing us in some emotional, intuitive way and our feelings to get into the past performances that are going to sustain us when we have to face a crisis, or in the midst of facing a crisis, and how we go forward with that, and especially how it's supporting our soul's trajectory, our karmic destiny for growth in a way that is like reaching beyond the established form, right? Reaching beyond what is, trying to reach out into the future, find a balance, right? So these things are going to be supporting each other, but it's still leading us to the conclusion that it's going to come through a very unexpected and very challenging situation. Because then we have the sun come into its trine to Pluto by the end of today, and it'll be exact. And so this degree is that flag at half mast. Oh man, geez. I mean, why do we have a flag at half mast? Because we are recognizing publicly somebody that has dedicated their life to service, right? And this is very much we may not get the recognition even in this lifetime of what we're doing, right? But we know that it ultimately is going to support the generations to come, right? And it's going to how we express ourselves in this moment is also going to very much find support with what Pluto is destroying on an institutional level right now. And it is happening within us, right? It's happening under the surface. Pluto's retrograde. These are experiences that we're having within us. And it's very much in this trine, this earth trine, to how we're expressing ourselves as someone who one day would be publicly recognized for what we are doing. And it's not to say that we should be doing it for that reason. It's saying that we give ourselves in service, and we're expressing ourselves through this, because this is the sun. And maybe one day we will be known, starseed, light worker, truth teller, right? Patriot. We may be enshrined as a cultural hero someday, but that's not why we do it. And now keep in mind that the flag at half mast does represent somebody who does pass away, that the culture enshrines as a hero. And there have been interesting things that have happened in conjunction with this degree at different points in time, where people have actually passed away on the more public service level. So I think that's really, really interesting. And I'm sure Pluto was involved because it's been hovering back and forth through this, very small window of time for the last 18 months. January 2020, it was at 22 degrees Capricorn. And so it's been going back and forth and back and forth. And so I wouldn't be surprised if we find this expressed in some way out in the world. But the fact that Pluto is retrograde, it seems way more likely that this is a personalized experience for all of us, especially because the moon was involved very recently. So I'm going to leave it at that, guys, because that's quite a bit of information to absorb right now. Please take very good care of yourself. Give yourself the time and the respite that is needed so that you can get back into a much more grounded state, that you can access your guidance, your higher self, to know that everything that is happening is the result of what has already been put into place a long time ago. Nothing can stop it, but what we do have choice over is how we experience the unfolding of this process, and in some ways the unraveling of the process in order to make space for the new earth coming in. And there's no birth without some labor. So we have to remember that too. And you have to be present and you have to be engaged in the process, but you also have to trust nature as it's unfolding, because it's not just us, it is the whole planet as a living being, nature as an actual function of life, right? That is also part of this process. And we are more supported than you can ever imagine, but you have to get past the fear, and you have to not feed it and feed the emotional divide if you want to actually access direct knowing, so that you can follow your intuition and be guided to where you need to be or what you need to do, and stand in some integrity in this process. So I love you guys. Thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. You can book a reading with me through catalystenergies.net. That's in the description box below. You can find Catalyst Energies on Facebook and Telegram as of now, and other platforms, BitChute and Odysee. I'm live on YouTube because there is no streaming option on those other platforms. If there were, perhaps I would be moving over to stream there, and perhaps there'll be some Twitch streaming coming in the future. But I'm really focused on working one-on-one with people right now, so please reach out if you're interested in a reading, and you can see the areas of your life that these transits are impacting. And of course, energetic support. I've been doing a ton of energy work with people distance-wise to support them in their process, to get intuitive information, to guide them through their process. And it's been really incredible. I did my first session with somebody's animal yesterday, and it went surprising, like in a distance way. I've done plenty of Reiki with animals in person. I've done a lot of work as a death doula for people's pets, and using Reiki as part of their transition, and working with rescue animals and things like that with Reiki. But this was the first time I've ever done a distance, and it was actually surprisingly went over very well as far as I can tell. I'm still waiting for their feedback, so I guess we'll see. So energetic support through Reiki and shamanic energy work is definitely an option. So you can book through the website through that too. I love you guys. Take very good care of yourselves, okay? And we'll be together tomorrow for some astrology on Friday morning.